Today we are talking about how your ex, your ex may be building a case against you if you are in a divorce or a custody fight. Okay, and frequently, so it's a great topic, especially for those that are either considering divorce or they are in the midst of a custody battle, or you're going through a legitimation, or you may even find yourself in a contempt situation because one parent is not following the visitation schedule and the parenting plan. So this is for you. If you have a family member or a friend and you feel like this topic is germane, feel free to forward. Obviously, like the video if it's helpful for you. My name is Genghis Shakhan of Shakhan and Wilkerson Law Firm, and I'm here on behalf of myself and attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. And today we are discussing how your ex may already be building a case against you. And for many folks who get to the courtroom and unfortunately find out that unfortunately they have began losing their case long before they made it into the courtroom. Okay, so today is a very important topic, and we're going to talk a little bit about how sometimes exes are documenting, recording, taking screenshots of evidence long before you make it to the courtroom in situations that you feel like are, you may just be arguing, and they are fairly harmless or benign, and they are in fact not. Okay, I do want to lead with, this is for educational purposes only. This is not legal advice. Every case is different, and of course, this is tailored for Georgia. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and discuss. Let's dive right into this topic. It's an important topic for folks that are engaged in kind of high conflict divorce, child custody cases. And many people unknowingly help the other side in these cases and build a actual stronger case against themselves. And we're going to talk about some of these self-inflicted wounds simply because they maybe just are less legally savvy, or they are just unsuspecting and very trusting of their spouse, who might be more unscrupulous, or just highly motivated to make sure that they are successful. Generally speaking, these divorces, especially child custody fights where both are seeking primary custody, is a zero-sum game, right? And so some people will do whatever it takes to win. Okay, and it's how you determine winning. All right. Usually in family law, there are no real winners. However, if you ask our clients, that's not true. All right, so let's talk about how everything may become evidence. All right, so it's important to note that this is the law, and of course, with the law, if you're making an argument, there are allegations. The expectation is that you're going to be able to produce proof of the allegations that are made. And so early on, family law cases involve things like text messages, emails, the usual suspects, social media posts, behavior, parenting behavior, financial conduct, witnesses, and emotional reactions. That is the stuff that family law is essentially made of. And in any family law case, you will see those things manifest. Okay. Now, it's important to note that in engaging, especially if you're co-parenting with the other party, you want to be mindful, especially if you have a divorce that's pending. Things that you believed to be, as I said, innocent, like an argument. These are perfect situations to create and basically have evidence that be taken against you. Maybe it be in the form of video or in the form of audio. And so, if you think you're just venting, if you think you're just arguing, if you think nobody will see this, that's probably not the case. Okay. Unfortunately, we have clients who find in court that conversations that they thought were private between them and their spouse, or, an exchange, a heated exchange that they thought was private, is going to be front and center and going to be used as an exhibit, right? To show that they are explosive, to show that they are reactive, to show that they are unstable. to show that they are emotionally unhinged, to show that they engage in bad parenting practices, whatever, okay, to show that they are spendthrifts. All of that stuff can come in. And of course, it depends on your counsel whether or not they are able to, keep some things out, bring some things in. And again, it's going to depend on what side of the aisle you're on, whether or not it's going to be beneficial or whether it's going to be harmful to your case. So in court, it's important to know that these screenshots become exhibits, and then of course videos become evidence. And the court, everyone loves a good video. Okay, so if someone is accusing you of being abusive, having a video to match up to that allegation is going to be essentially, a great way to make your case and a great way to substantiate whatever arguments that you are actually making. Okay. All right, so let's talk about these good old text messages and emails. Okay, and this is the stuff that good family law cases, hardy family law cases are essentially made of, because most of these family law cases are rife with texts, with emails, with screenshots, and sometimes audio and video. Okay, and so let's discuss that very briefly. Your ex may be collecting these things. Okay, and many times one of the parties is unsuspecting. They feel like they are just in a divorce. They're just having these arguments. They are venting over, over text. They are venting via email. They are sending mean audio messages. And, essentially, your ex, soon to be ex spouse, and their counsel are just collecting these things, right? And they are going to be used later on as exhibits. And you are making their case that much stronger. And so, angry messages, threats, profanity laced messages, insults, parenting conflicts, admissions, right? If you're admitting to things, yeah, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. However, yes, I'm abusive. Yes, I'm a womanizer. And this stuff is recorded. These are case killers, some of this information, and these are admissions. So, we move from the realm of just allegations to you have admitted, and the parties will probably be forced to concede that you are a womanizer, right? For an example, or that you believe in corporal punishment for everything. Okay, and so that might impact what custody looks like. All right, financial discussions as well as inconsistent statements. This is the kind of stuff that your ex may be collecting, and might be used against you in the courtroom. And so let's talk a little bit about why that matters, right? So you may say, "Hey, well, it doesn't matter. I don't care what my ex collects." Okay. Well, courts evaluate emotional stability. They're evaluating communication, co-parenting ability, and they're most importantly are evaluating your credibility. Okay. So if you are it comes out via text and emails that you have a habit of being dishonest, a habit of being deceitful, that, for example, might impact your credibility, whether or not a judge is going to believe you when you are saying that, hey, you're pointing your finger at your soon to be ex and saying, hey, they are abusive. If you have a history of being dishonest, that impacts your credibility. Okay. And so, what, one party might be able to prove by laying out evidence before the court is going to make one case stronger and perhaps handicap another case. And so here are some common mistakes that we essentially see people make when it comes to these types of cases. They will send these emotional late night texts, okay, which is always a mistake, okay. And so you might have had a glass of wine or two or four, and something pops into your mind, and you decide that I'm going to send this late night text message to my ex or my soon to be ex spouse, and I'm gonna tell them about themselves. Okay. You have to assume that it's going to be used in court as an exhibit. All right. If you are arguing repeatedly, right, and so you are arguing on a daily basis, you're arguing routinely, this stuff, those text messages are probably going to resurface. If you are threatening court action constantly, if you are using children as the messenger, if you are harassing the other parent, these are the common mistakes that we see that essentially lead to producing all kinds of evidence that might be used to undermine your case. And so, before our recommendation is always going to be, before sending that text message to your soon-to-be ex-spouse, hit the pause button. Right, call a timeout on the play, reread the text message. All right, and then assume that a judge is going to reread it in court aloud. Okay, and so if a judge were to reread what you just sent or what you plan to send, would that help or would that hurt your case? All right. And so that's what you need to do before sending out these text messages. Okay. The other thing that sometimes spouses engage in, and even the common man and woman engage in, is this social media surveillance. Okay. Folks will create dummy accounts to spy on their spouse. Okay. And so this is an excellent way to build strong cases against your ex or your soon to be ex. You can find infidelity. You can find examples of bad parenting. You can find, things like spying and things like stalking. All of those things, all kinds of bad conduct is going to usually be in those social media posts. And so your ex may monitor your Facebook, your Instagram, TikTok accounts, even if they're private. They may try to squeeze in there. They may already be there. Snapchat, dating apps, those are going to come back in divorce cases. It could be the difference between spousal support and alimony and none. Okay. Your behavior and conduct on some of these dating apps. They'll monitor your YouTube. And in addition to that, they will also monitor your friends or your mutuals pages. Okay. And so, they may take a look. You might be in someone else's Instagram stories, on a beach in Destin or Fort Lauderdale. All right. And, hugged up with someone that you're not supposed to be hugged up with, that is not your husband or wife. That can come back and bite you. Okay. And so, you want to be mindful that this stuff, you want to keep a low profile when it comes to social media. And anything on social media, obviously, is public, is going to be fair game, and it frequently is. I could think of, I had one client who was on OnlyFans. Okay, and her OnlyFans account was connected to her Twitter. Okay, opposing side got a hold of it. Guess what? It became a courtroom exhibit, and it was a whole discussion around her OnlyFans presence. Right, so you want to be careful, right, about what you are putting out there on social media, especially if you have active cases, divorce or child custody cases. Okay, so these posts, what kind of posts are harmful? Things that might show you partying, excessive spending. The biggest one is going to be a new relationship. You're in a new relationship. Guess what? You just put a battery pack in your soon to be ex spouse, because it's a great way to infuriate. It's a great way to infuriate the other party. And essentially, anything that you post, of course, you have to assume that you're going to see it in a court of law, given whatever context you guys are there under. Vacations, firearms. So firearms are important, right? If you're sitting there, if there's some, let's just say, illicit conduct, or maybe there's drugs in some of these social media posts or stories or Snapchat. That kind of stuff might show that you make very bad decisions that are going to impact your parenting. Okay, so I've seen that happen. All right, where folks are posting certain things and they're having minor children in bad situations, and it absolutely can impact what the judge believes is bad parenting, and what their custody, their visitation plan might look like in their parenting plan. All right, so alcohol, other conflicts, all of that stuff is going to give you pretty much be in a bad light. Okay, you want to avoid that. So important to understand and remember that even deleted posts, okay, can survive. They can survive through screenshots. Okay, I know people are really happy about Snapchat because things can disappear, but downloads as well as metadata, those are the gifts that keep on giving. Okay, and so even though you may think that you've deleted something, if someone gets a little peeksy at it, it might be saved and used later on in a court of law. So you want to stop posting emotional content, and you want to increase your privacy settings, and you probably want to tell your friends not to tag you. Okay, that's not legal advice. That's just something to consider, again, for educational purposes only. All right, so let me talk a little bit about why sometimes your exes are doing this, and many times there's a narrative out there, or they may have certain kind of a legal theory they'd like to advance, and they might be trying to create a timeline. Okay, and so in creating this timeline, people often document exchanges, record interactions, record voicemails, or keep voicemails, keep journals. And then, of course, they might preserve parenting app messages, and so these are the things that people will do to try to, again, match a timeline up to a legal theory. So courts are a lot of times looking for patterns, right? And so repeated incidents that, might show instability, emotional instability, or harassment might be used against you. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Things that show that you are engaging in parental alienation, you have anger issues, or you engage in poor co-parenting, right? That kind of evidence, creating a timeline that backs that up, is going to hurt your case, no matter how good your attorney is. I do want to, make sure that that's important, that you know that, right? Your attorney might be great, but if you are hamstringing your attorney, right, you are shooting your attorney in the foot by, engaging in this conduct that, essentially is generating a treasure trove of evidence against you in your case. It's not going to amount to a hill of beans for you, and might be really a gold mine for the opposing side. Okay, it's important to also know that children quickly might become part of the case. It happens. All right, so what parents don't understand many times, these dangerous behaviors can absolutely essentially become evidence used later on in their cases. So things not to engage in, where you're essentially making sure, where you're bringing the children into the fighting, is questioning your children excessively, venting to children, or criticizing the other parent, or involving the minor children in the litigation. That's the type of stuff you want to avoid. Is the kind of stuff that essentially will come back up when you are in the courtroom. Okay. And so doing those things might create allegations of, obviously, parental alienation, manipulation, as well as that you might be a party that is emotionally harming the children. So courts really prioritize a child's well-being and stability. If you've looked at our other videos, you know that that's very important to courts, is protecting young children and minors. Okay, now let's talk about some temporary protective orders and false allegations. All right, so these are cases, these high conflict cases. There are risks that one party might engage in making false allegations against another. Again, it's a situation where, if you're in a zero sum game and the other party is unscrupulous, in order to one up the other party, one party might be engaged in making these false allegations. So in some cases, one party might file a temporary protective order against, or a petition against, the other party, and they might document arguments and prepare allegations very strategically, right? So if you are engaging, and this becomes a pattern of bad mouthing the other spouse, or making threats of the other spouse, popping up on the other spouse, and essentially is being recorded, and that evidence can be produced in a court of law, then you're going to make a case that you might be a danger. Okay, you might be a threat, to your spouse, and it just makes any allegations against you that much stronger. And so it's important to know that many of these allegations involve very real safety concerns. However, others are heavily disputed factual issues during litigation, and we talk a little bit about that more in another video. Okay, so protective order allegations can obviously influence, and I'm not going to do a deep dive into this. Take a look at our video on protective orders and how they impact divorce and child custody cases, but they can influence essentially temporary custody, visitation, living arrangements, firearm rights, and they can also give one party leverage in a divorce. So it's very important that you keep that in mind. And this is one of the many reasons why you should really monitor your conduct during these types of high conflict cases. All right, so the other way that you can harm your case is, of course, if one party is engaging in financial surveillance. And if you are in a divorce, high stakes divorce, there are a lot of assets. You have to assume that there might be a private investigator on you. You have to assume that later on there might be a forensic accountant involved, and that one party is just engaged in surveilling the other. So your ex might be monitoring your spending habits, might be monitoring hidden accounts to your transfers, your gambling habits. If you are gambling away the marital estate, cash withdrawals, online purchases, as well as crypto activity, all that stuff might be monitored, right? It might be surveilled by one party. Okay. And so your financial conduct can absolutely impact what equitable division is going to look like at the conclusion of your divorce, or child support. And then, of course, things like your credibility and any kind of hidden assets claims. Right. And so we have another video on hidden assets here on YouTube. Make sure you check that out as well, especially if you're going through a divorce and there's a lot of assets. Okay. Now, what some of the common mistakes that we see a lot of times in these divorce cases and child custody cases is folks they want to kind of step on the scene with their new paramour or their new boo, and they do so way too early, right? During these when these when these cases are still pending. And so you're introducing your children to the to your spouse, not your spouse, excuse me, but to someone that you're dating, your new romantic partner. You're posting your romantic partner too quickly online. Folks are moving in with folks too quickly, and they're exposing their children to unstable environments. Okay, due to your dating practices, and of course, the children might run back, tell the your soon-to-be ex-spouse kind of what your romantic situation is, your dating situation, and they may have legit safety concerns, right? There are strangers that are staying over when you are doing your overnight visitations. Those are things that can absolutely be harmful to your case if it comes out and there's evidence of these things. So you have to assume that your spouse is going to be eyeballing, you're monitoring your social media, as well as if you are out there dating, even what they might befriend that person on social media as well, and monitor their social media activity, just to keep an eye on you and what's going on with you guys, and to see if their children pop up on social media, all of which is going to be very harmful to your case. Okay, so you got to assume that all of this is going to become evidence, and that's one of the reasons why we always encourage our clients to wait until after the divorce is finalized. But it's going to become evidence regarding your judgment, your parenting priorities, household stability, and the moral. It's great to make morality arguments, right? All of which can kind of really speak to your parenting. All right, so your own behavior might be build a case against you, simply because if you engage in this in bad conduct, the court might feel some type of way about that. So sometimes the biggest problem is less of your ex and more about just your unmanaged emotions or your ability to regulate, self-regulate. Okay. Now, courts are watching for anger. They're watching for impulsiveness, threats, emotional instability, refusal to cooperate, and essentially an inability to co-parent. So this is one of the reasons why it's important not to give your spouse or soon-to-be ex any more fuel to essentially create a stronger case against you. Okay, judges often care less about who's winning these arguments and more about maturity, stability, and who appears healthiest and or a good fit to parent the minor children. Okay, and so here are again some examples of how people ruin their cases or some self-inflicted wounds. As I talked about earlier, some are going to be missing visitation, refusing communication with the other parent, and it's going to impact co-parenting, how successfully you guys can do that. Violating court orders, any kind of public arguments or posting online spats, drinking excessively, inconsistent parenting, ignoring school issues, and harassing communication. Okay, and so it's also important to know that really these small mistakes repeated over time can create these really damaging patterns. All right, now you want to protect yourself by controlling communications. Okay, keep messages very brief, make sure they're respectful, child focused, and then make sure they are calm. Okay, that's going to be essentially the best advice that we can give you on communications. And just assume everything is going to be used as evidence: text messages, voicemails, emails, posts, and videos. Assume during the pendency of your case, this stuff is going to be used as evidence in the court of law. And assume it all will appear in front of a judge. Stay off of social media if you can during the pendency of your case. It's just there are no benefits. There's no upside for you to engage in a whole lot of excessive social media posting. And then document your parenting. Right, you want to make sure that you're keeping records of your school visits, the medical care and medical visits, doctor visits, extracurricular activities, visitation, and communication. All right, document everything. That's going to be helpful for you to create a narrative or a counter narrative if one exists, and to essentially, as I said, if your spouse is documenting these things and they are building a case against you, it's going to be a great way for you to essentially create a defense. Okay, and then you want to avoid emotional reactions. All right, and so your ex might expect angry responses, impulsive behavior and escalation, and you just don't want to give them the evidence. Okay, so you don't want to engage in that stuff. And then lastly, you want to follow those court orders. If there are court orders that have been issued, you want to follow them strictly. Okay, be careful about modifying those orders. Uh, of course, especially if you guys are engaged in really a high conflict case, I would just, really recommend following the court order to the letter. And that's one of the reasons why we will always encourage folks. Again, if you're going through a high conflict divorce or a high conflict custody fight, to think about retaining counsel, because an experienced attorney can absolutely help you avoid emotional mistakes, organize evidence, challenge false allegations, as well as prepare testimony. Okay, so those things are essential, not only because obviously you are in the middle of a divorce or child custody fight, but it's also going to protect you versus things like temporary protective orders. And if you haven't looked at that temporary protective order video, and protective orders and how they derail other family law cases, absolutely take a look at that. Okay, so a lot of times these family law cases are very, very technical, and situations can escalate fairly fast. And so it's going to be in your best interest to bring on a law firm that has a lot of experience with high conflict divorce cases, high conflict custody cases, and just high conflict cases in general, even when it comes to criminal cases. All right, and so The long-term impact of these things, right? If your ex is successful in building a case against you, because of the evidence that they have been able to gather, even maybe before the pendency of a divorce or child custody case, it's going to impact your divorce litigation. And so it can impact custody, and it can impact essentially the division of the estate, emotional health, property, retirement, as well as some of your finances. So you want to make sure that during litigation that you are emotionally, you are checking yourself emotionally. You want to make sure that again you are also keeping records of your own behavior when it comes to if you're visiting as well as your spending on the minor children, if you're paying for medical services, if you are and paying for extracurricular activities, that's going to be really really important. So family law cases are not won by the loudest person. They are won by the most prepared and the most disciplined, and the most credible person. Okay. All right. If we can help you out, guys, well, I want to thank you for watching. And if we can help you out, you can always give us a call, 404-999-9529 or 478-845-1213. And that is if you are ready to move forward, you are ready to engage a law firm to assist you. That's what that is for, a consultation. Okay. We okay. All right. So thank you for joining us. And make sure that you tap in with us. Go to the link in our bio if you are interested in blogs, if you're interested in looking at some of our reviews, and if you are interested in signing up for a consultation.